Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
Mary Kirikiri is back for the third time. Today, we've got her on to discuss 3 of her recent articles from the Diary of the CMO series. They're all linked to Kantar's latest paper, The Blueprint for Brand Growth, and they really focus on 3 challenges that a lot of CMOs have: the accelerators for growth, pricing power, and how to approach budget conversations. I hope you enjoy the show.
This episode's been sponsored by Quadical, fractional marketing leadership using evidence-based marketing practices. That's quadical.com.
Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast, a place for business leaders to get the best and most credible information on marketing, strategy, and innovation. Your hosts, Mark Binkley and Vasilis Douros, share their experiences as they gather insights from the world's leading experts. Now, on with the show.
Excellent. Welcome back to the Sleeping Barber. Today we have Mary Kirikiri joining us.
Hello.
Hi, Mary. It's so good to have you back. It feels like it's been a while. We were talking. It's been like a year and a half, I think.
It's been a year and a half, yes, and it's very good to be back. Thank you.
Well, we're excited to have you here. So, Mary, for those who don't know, is a global thought leader at Kantar. And we've had her on a couple of times talking about a lot of work that Kantar's done and she's done there. Recently, over the last year and a half, you've been busy writing a whole series of CMO series articles that ranged in topics from pricing to category expansion to getting the CFO to endorse brand investments. So many interesting topics and very, very relevant practical topics to get into. So,
I'm so glad you're saying that.
Yeah, it was really good reading all the things. So we're not going to cover all of them. There's 7 articles, I believe, in total. But we're going to cover, we're digging into 3 of them, really. One around future power and meaningful difference, one around pricing, and then one around influencing budget.
You know what? The most important ones.
Yeah, well, they're all kind of related. So it was hard to pull them apart, but yeah.
True.
Yeah, and they're all good.
Oh, thank you.
But maybe we can just start there with, why write this series? What was the inspiration behind it?
My starting point, my inaugural point is always a question from a client, or rather a series of questions. If you get them on the same topic, you're examining the right thing. So for me, this is the single best place for inspiration. And this time I wanted to create a guide that casually solves problems with data, a place, let's say, where marketers would jot down their day's experiences, but they wouldn't really keep it in the drawer. It's for everyone to see because it has compelling data inside and it helps them, I would like to think that it actually helps them make allies in the business, and it helps them fight their corner,
Yeah. It's funny as you were saying that. I was flashing back to when I was a rep at a broadcast media place, and I started blogging way back when, and I didn't know what to blog about, so then I just started looking through my notebook and seeing all the questions that people would ask me, and that I would write them down. I'm like, oh, that one happened a couple times. That one happened a couple times. Like, it is such a really good source of inspiration, hey?
Oh yeah. Turns out it is, yes.
Yeah. So well, thanks for the background and the context. V, do you want to jump in the next one there?
Yeah. So, obviously this is the third time you're on the podcast, and we've gotten to know you over the years. But the one thing that's always fascinated us, I think, is like the title that you hold. So you're the global thought leader at Kantar. Can you provide some context how you got into that role?
You know what I feel? I feel that a lot of it is down to luck. There's this book that I like very much from Andy Nair. He wrote "Go Luck Yourself," and he talks about uncovering hidden opportunities.
I love that.
Turning misfortune into fortune. And for me, that moment was COVID. So that's when I felt that I should be moving internally in the business. And I had to trust my gut feeling that this was going to be a safer place. But it was literally triggered by that. But I mean, that aside, expanding your network is always one of the major factors that would open up unexpected opportunities. And I've been working with Kantar when I was at the BBC. In fact, Kantar was one of my favorite vendors. So when I first joined, I knew I was nudging my luck towards the right direction. So,
Right.
to answer your question, majorly lucky, but we do make our own luck, right?
That's true.
Mm. Yeah, fair enough. And like in the luck part, like when we think about like where your role's going and like, as we've seen a bit of an evolution, I think, just in the kinds of material that Kantar has been publishing and specifically this CMO series. Why is Kantar dabbling into this bit of research and specifically like targeting CMOs, and like what's the problem that you guys are trying to solve, not just with you but in general?
I'd say we are Thomas Kahn's acolytes. He wrote back in 1962 about the fact that within any scientific paradigm, researchers like us, we operate under a shared set of assumptions, methods, and worldviews. And you see, these paradigms often limit what scientists can perceive and solve. And we actually believe now that our industry's current paradigm is a little bit incomplete. So I'm referring to penetration, obviously, here, and the fact that it's celebrated as a totem of growth. So we believe in that as well. But we are really passionate about finding out what really drives it, what defines growth. And that's what we're looking to answer with our research. We believe that we can prove that other paths exist to the ones that we consider today, and it's very obvious that we are very enthusiastic advocates of the importance of brand equity. But we do continue to test it, and we're very happy every time we test hypotheses to challenge them or revalidate them. And it just happens that every time it gets revalidated. So it is very important. Brand equity is very important.
Yeah, I guess that's one of those findings in science that, a study of one is fine, but if the repeatability of the study, that part adds to the validity of the study, that every time you're able to repeat it and you get a similar result based on a similar format and the methodology, it makes the finding much more accurate.
Yes.
Or
and
confident.
We are prepared to falsify it if we have to, but so we are, it's with this mindset that we start. We're very happy to revalidate it.
Interesting.
Mark, I know you and I have talked about this from time to time again, is how do you get, internal buy-in sometimes, where a lot of individuals or practitioners will always believe like, hey, this is theoretical. It's not really real world applicable. I love what Mary, what you're saying here is, because the moment that you're able to showcase that this is repeatable, then it no longer leaves in this ether of theory. This is now practical. And I think that's what we as marketers need more and more of to really kind of say, no, we have to trust this. We have to lean into here because this is something we can apply. And I love that.
For me, I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but I spent a long time in pharma. And so whenever I was speaking to physicians in pharma, they would always say, I practice evidence-based medicine, which means that we use evidence to guide our decision-making. And so, but there's a whole process around like diagnosing the patient properly and then applying the evidence that you have based on your diagnosis. But you rarely, as a pharma sales guy, I rarely had a study to prove that the product I had was perfectly situated and indicated in every specific patient scenario. So the evidence-based medicine part was, we're applying what we know to the real people in front of us. And it's not always a perfect fit, but it's, the idea of do no harm.
Yeah.
And so I think about that all the time when it comes to marketing, because the more we apply evidence-based marketing to the situations, the more confident we should feel about the decisions we're making, because it's based on the best available evidence. And that evidence, that body evidence, as Mary points out, grows and grows and grows over time. because people like Kantar, people at Kantar are doing great work and other places as well. So
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
And there was a compliment there as well. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Actually, full of compliments and praise. Thank you.
You're doing God's work, Mary.
That's one way to put it.
All right, V, let's jump into the future power, meaningful difference version of the articles. So why don't you jump into that?
Yeah, I can take this one. So, I don't know of a brand, a company that isn't looking to grow, either big or small. Everyone's looking for growth. And, one of the big mainstays of a lot of we think about future power and meaningful difference is actually, what does future power or equity actually mean? Can you take a moment and actually just help us define that?
Yeah, sure. So it's a survey-derived metric, right? So it's we don't have a crystal ball, right? So we want to predict if a brand is going to grow over the next 12 months, and future power helps us do that. So what it is that it's based purely on consumers' current perceptions of the brand. Can we make a validated prediction of future growth? Yes, we can. And there's using future power. So there's a chart in there in the report in one of the articles where we show the clusters of brands with lower, medium, and higher future power. And the data in it proves that brands that have higher future power are 4 times more likely to grow value share than brands with lower future power over the next 12 months. So you see, we don't need the crystal ball because we're looking at a brand strength today and we make a prediction of future growth. Now, the challenge has always been the size. And I say the size as in the brand size, because
the brand size. Okay.
It can't blind us. So we've got to control for size. We need to remove the double jeopardy effect. And it's by giving the data, applying the right treatment to the data, that we can actually identify what it is that brands that grow have. And it is future power. So go ahead.
No, I just want to dig into that a bit because a little bit about the methodology, just so I better understand that, and a little bit about what are the levers that drive this future power. So, like on the survey side, because you said this is a survey metric. So I assume, based on what you're just saying, you survey the market of consumers, presumably, and then ask them about a category of some kind. And like, what happens at that point? Controlling for size?
You control for size, and then you, at the end of the day, you need to have, there are three dimensions: meaningfulness, differentiation, and salience that make up. I'm talking now really basic, no scientific talk, right? We need Jorge for that. But you need these 3 dimensions in the right quantities, and they form your pricing power. So if you over-index in meaningfulness and differentiation, these are the 2 that are very important for pricing power. If you are doing better in those 2 dimensions than your competitors in your category, then you are more likely to grow over the next 12 months. So this is what the data says. Yes.
So that's the drivers for future power. Is
Correct.
future power the same as pricing power? Is that, or we're using it interchangeably? Yeah.
Well, not necessarily, because you see, future power is about the value share over the next 12 months. But when it comes to pricing power, it's about the people who are prepared to pay. We have found almost double for brands that have pricing power. So it's similar, and I suppose the composition is similar. So there's a great difference between them and demand power, which is more about the now, and salience is more of a rock star within the makeup of demand power. But when it comes to brand metrics like future power and pricing power, we see that meaningfulness and differentiation play a much greater role in making it happen.
Yeah, and the levers for driving. So it's meaningfulness, differentiation,
Salience.
and salience that are the drivers of the future power, or the perception of what people believe to be a stronger brand,
Correct.
regardless of size. So those are the three things that we're trying to move. If you're the brand manager or the company,
the needle of
right.
Exactly. The 3 dimensions that you ideally track in your brand tracker. But they move slowly, right? Because they are brand metrics. So you've got to be patient. You're going to see change within 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, if you focus on it. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
okay. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're a brand that wants to walk on water, I'm having a theme here, I guess now. You want to make sure you're moving your higher future power, which is controlled by salience, differentiation, and what was the third one? Meaningfulness. Got it.
Yes. Not necessarily in that order, but yes.
Yeah. And it might be different for different organizations or the category that they're in. It might need to push one more than the other or something to that effect.
Absolutely. Yes.
The timing is an interesting thing that you pointed out as well, though, because when you talk about meaningful differentiation and salience, that they're slow movers, you, as an organization, you probably have to focus on one in a specific time and actively try to move it? Or do you feel like they're all can be kind of moved at the same time?
Oh no, you can work on all of them. But you can see like the impact on salience sooner rather than the other two. Yeah,
that makes sense.
Speaking of salience, maybe can you describe in your mind the difference between mental and physical availability and the meaningful difference frameworks? Because the meaningful difference is the 3 things we just talked about. So the salience, the differentiation, and meaningful, right?
Sure, yes. So mental availability for the Elasticity Institute is salient. So it's about coming to mind easily, coming to mind fast during a purchase situation. But for us at Kantar, the term of mental availability encompasses the 3. Yes, salience, but also meaningfulness and differentiation. So meaningfulness meeting functional and emotional needs, but also for differentiation, standing out or being perceived as a trendsetter. So you see, coming to mind is enough to measure what we said before, a brand's demand power. So what's happening right now, the likelihood of being chosen right now, but it's certainly insufficient to measure a brand's future power, so a brand's longer-term success. And when it comes to physical availability that you said, again, according to the Elasticity Institute, it's about being available, right? It's about a brand's distribution, which is a term and a concept that is not far from our own, because in the blueprint for brand growth, we talk about being more present, which includes the distribution bit. Whether people can find you on the shelf or the e-shop, but also whether you are visible enough, your position on the shelf, whether you have the right packaging, and whether your pricing is right. Are you affordable? Are you offered in a bundle? Are you coming with a subscription? Now, and yes, so we use the 4th metric, and I'm going to mention it here. So activation power. So it's about understanding the flow of equity into sales and vice versa. But again, the meaningful difference salience framework is at the very key core of the concept and of the calculations.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I know we covered the relationship between future power and meaningful difference framework. Essentially, the three pillars help control the future power of the meaningfulness, salience, and differentiation. When we're thinking about, though, in the context of accelerators, and how do we actually push that button of accelerated growth for organizations? What are those accelerators in the meaningful difference in different framework, And can you quickly kind of walk through them?
And now a short word from our sponsor.
This episode was sponsored by Quadical. Quadical. Did I say that right? Quadical?
You did. Quadical. Yeah.
Quadical. Mark, what is it?
Well, V, I'm glad you asked. Quadical is my own company, actually. So, I'm the Sleeping Barber Podcast co-host with you, but I also have my own company, and so I'm happy to sponsor the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
Love
part
that.
because I give so much time to it. But Quadical is a fractional marketing leadership firm where we specialize in evidence-based marketing, and we do consulting work for companies typically between $30 to $300 million, and helping them navigate some of the challenges that people have, like I know something's broken, but I'm not quite sure how to fix it, nor do I have the time to fix it. And so that's where we help out a lot of people.
Well, I'll speak for Mark as well, because you're wearing your Quadical hat right now. We appreciate your sponsorship of the Sleeping Barber Podcast. And for all those that may be interested, we do have a whole bunch of sponsorship options. Always looking to bring on new sponsors. We have a lot of creative ideas that can really help across a global audience.
Thanks, V.
No, thank you, Quadical. We appreciate your business.
And now back to the show.
The 3 accelerators that we have in the blueprint, right?
In the blueprint, yeah.
Yes. I'll describe them, but I'm going to describe them with examples.
Sure.
Perfect.
So the first one, which is about predisposition, I'm going to use Oasis as an example, and I'm going to ask you the question. So how do they sold the tour in one day, although the price was quite high? How did they manage to do that? It's because over a period of 30 years, the brand created huge predisposition. So obviously, it's an extreme example, but there's something that when it comes to brands, our global learnings show that brands that are able to successfully create predisposition, they are able to successfully drive demand and support a price premium. So if we want to create predisposition, if we want to give our brand a head start, what we're saying is invest in advertising experiences, or exposures and experiences, as we call it in the report. And then for the second one, I'm going to use the black cab in London, right, as an example, because it's the thing that you want, or when you want it, you can have it. It's never present. Because the second accelerator is about being more present. And a black cab in London, it can be quite frustrating. When you can't have it when you need it, and this is an important parallel for brands, because if brands are not present, they can't fulfill a need when a choice is being made. And predisposition, our first accelerator, so our Oasis example, is great. Predisposition is great, but you will be leaving money on the table if you lack presence. And I suppose this is exactly why we now have Uber in our lives. And for the last accelerator, I'm gonna use King Charles, who is representing monarchy, because just because your mummy is popular, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are as well, or that you're going to be. So the challenges that are faced by the royal family have, again, parallels to brands, because brands strive to remain relevant. They want to stay at the top of their game. They want to be vibrant, and they want to excite the new generation, and maybe even invite people in who are now outside the category. So how do you do that? You need to find new space, as we say. It's the name of the third accelerator. It's about finding the most incremental spaces for your brand. It's like a good stretch, but for your brand.
And that can, and I'm assuming, sorry, Mark, I just
go for it.
Just one quick thing here. When we're thinking about finding new space, I'm going to make an assumption here. Sometimes it can come in ways of product line extensions. It can come by way, actually, looking to reach more people, go global, etc. Is there one of those elements that you feel like actually works better than others? Like when you're at that moment when you're trying to find that space, is there one that companies or organizations or brands should be looking at first before they start dabbling? And I know there are probably nuances to every organization, but
Well, you see, there are differences between sizes. So
okay, yeah.
for the bigger and the smaller brands, I suppose the smaller brands need to disrupt behaviors. The bigger ones need to look up and out. But ultimately, so you say I see the bigger ones as expanding into different categories, and the smaller ones into stretching into more incremental spaces like motivations or occasions.
Okay. I like that distinction though.
Yeah. It makes me think some of the clients that I've been working with lately, there's like different ways to segment a market too. And so that could also create a new opportunity to find new space, just the way you see the market. So if you look at, traditional personas and you go, well, I'm looking at let's say a 50-year-old female as my primary target or primary persona. If you change the way you perceive the market and go, well, what are the needs that we serve as opposed to the persona? You might actually create more space just by changing the way you segment.
That as well. Yes.
It's kind of interesting.
Yes.
Because it doesn't have to be physically more distribution and more stores. Like it just could be the way the meaningful part. It could be also an expansion zone, like more meaningful to more people.
Yeah. Meeting those functional needs that we said before. Yes. Of more people.
More people, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so the part that there was another article you wrote around pricing, but like all these, that's why a lot of these things are related, because we were talking about future power and driving future power, and we talked about the importance of and the link between pricing and whatnot.
Yes.
But there's this idea that has been around for a while, like, or I used to say this all the time anyway, that a good strong brand can demand higher prices. And so I don't know, is that true? Is that part of the finding? Do you see that in the research that you have?
Yeah, it's true. There is a correlation between pricing power and price elasticity, and it's been validated by us, at least by us, many times. So, and that correlation is that the higher your pricing power, the less sensitive your brand is to price changes. So effectively, consumers become more desensitized to your price adjustments. And in fact, we've recently done a case study. It's in the article that talks about pricing, right? So what's marketing's contribution to profit is the title of the article, and we have analyzed data for a UK skincare brand, and we found that without improving price elasticity, volume sales would drop dramatically. And in fact, that would lead to a weaker revenue growth. So yes, to answer your question, is no myth, far from it. And I suppose what we're saying is that if you monitor your pricing power, because it is a proxy metric for price elasticity, then in your brand tracker, you can see that how your brand strength and your price elasticity are trending, and then you can time your price correction with minimum losses. So it sounds it's less simple than I make it sound, but not tracking your pricing power is not a very wise thing to do, because it is directly linked to your price elasticity, and it's one of those brand metrics that, as we said before, it's moving slowly because it's linked to people's attitudes, not to their behaviors. But so you will see a change, assuming that you make the right decisions and moves. You will see a change within 6 to 12 months.
There's a case study too that I'm sure you probably have seen it from Adam and Eve DDB about McCain's fries. I think it was one of the IPA effectiveness case studies.
Sure,
which
I have,
really,
yes.
it's amazing. Like it really focuses on that, and you can see it. It's over a 9-year period. You can see it change year by year by year by year.
Yeah. No, well read.
Yeah, it's interesting,
Yes.
but especially now because we've got inflation. I mean, we've had inflation since COVID, and we've always had inflation, but it became much more pronounced and much more real. And so it's such an important metric and lever that I think is often overlooked in marketing, because we often just think about we need sales today, and so we discount, but that's not the objective of that. And to your point, there's a much longer term objective.
Yes.
There are so many examples. Like, well, obviously for me, what always comes to mind is Apple, right? And how they've been able to sustain this premium price. But then, you know, when I think about like making sure you're positioning yourself in the market the right way, you want to make sure A, you're not leaving money on the table. B, you're close to that ceiling that still has that appeal. It's like, yes, it's the premiumness, etc. Or you get to the point where, you know, Apple released that SE phone, the iPhone 16 or 17 SE, which is supposed to be like more of a budget phone, right? So they see that they're missing an opportunity on part of the market. So they're introducing a device to cater to that market.
True. Yeah.
While still protecting their flagship devices as well. So like when I think about pricing, product, things like that, like obviously it's a never evolving pendulum, if you will, just finding and striking that balance. And I always often think of Apple as haven't been able to successfully do that for the longest time, by both the product diversification, but then also the pricing of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a very good example.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Okay. So let's circle back quickly to the Meaningful Difference Framework Network. What is wrong with my head today? Is there any correlation between a person's willingness to pay versus a perceived difference?
Yes, the difference is worth paying more for. Yes, we've analyzed many, as in 40,000 brands, as part of our Kantar Brand Z database, and we found a very strong correlation between increasing the relative difference, and consumers' willingness to pay more for it. So it's not just about boosting trial and share; it's about having a differentiated brand position, because you can lower consumer price sensitivity should you put up your price, because it allows you to yield healthy margins and to increase your profitability, which should be every marketer's dream.
It protects budgets as well.
Correct. In fact, you will increase it. You will come out with more money than you asked for.
Yeah.
Driving perceived difference is a perceptual thing. So again, going back to your point earlier about how it changes over time slowly, and it's something we can influence largely through a combination of advertising, the product mix, the customer experience, and all that kind of thing. Not necessarily differentiation in terms of like actual product differentiation. It could be like that could be one thing, but I mean, there's so many copycat things. So it's not always just about the product being totally unique and different. I kind of struggle with how to make things really different. Like unless a company is, the one example I always think about is Zappos. They went all in on customer service, and it was everything that they did was like 100% focused on customer service. Originally, when they first came out, they still did e-com and they still did shoe sales, and they, like it wasn't different from other places, but their point of differentiation was the way they managed their customers.
Correct. Yes, it can be down to experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because then, it's sometimes hard to put your finger on what that thing is that's going to make you so different, unless you just say this is the thing we're going to be different on, and then you just pick that lane and you just go after it, like say Zappos did maybe.
Well, you say it repeatedly, you say it consistently, and it can be many different things. Difference can be that relative differentiation can be created by many different things. But we're not talking about words, right? Because no one can own any words. It's different to the USB as we were talking about it back in the 60s, or they were actually, I wasn't alive. We're talking about standing out and setting the trend in your category and being relatively different in the sense that being something more, a little bit more than your competitor, not something entirely different.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So it's not, it isn't, the objective isn't to be totally unique. It just
No.
perceived to be
uniqueness. Yes.
different on some facet of the functional or emotional benefit category, like spectrum.
Correct. Yes.
Cool. When it comes to influencing customers' willingness to pay, also and the perceived difference, is there a difference between how brands go about this? When you look at, say, big brands like a luxury brand like Gucci, or on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's everyday low prices at Target. They both need to improve the willingness to pay, I assume, because inflation is a threat to both of them and eroding profit. But do brands have to approach it differently?
You see, the two brands that you mentioned, yes, they have completely different price tags, but ideally, their brand managers strive for exactly the same thing, which is to match their price to their brand. So to how much their brand is worth in the people's minds, to match the price to that, to how much their brand is worth in people's minds. Because successful pricing doesn't necessarily equal trading at a super premium end of the sector. Success is defined by a perfect alignment between the price itself and consumers' perception. So what pricing power, as you see, is relevant to all brands, even the ones that are offering great value, like the one that you mentioned, Target.
Yeah, or even Walmart, everyday low prices. Like it you can promote that, but your customer base is different.
Yes. Yeah.
And they have their expectations are different, but you still need to influence their willingness to pay.
Correct. And you see, we should never forget that people will invest in what they perceive as valuable. They will cut down, especially now they will cut down, but they will cut down less on things, on items, on products or services that they perceive as valuable.
Right.
So one of the things we need to ensure as marketers that we do is that the value needs to remain our guiding principle, and our pricing needs to be aligned to that value.
Yeah, even at that, I was just thinking, like, it's very possible there are people who've bought a Gucci bag and then shop regularly at Walmart or Target.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because they may look at a bag like that as a value purchase that's like a splurge.
Yeah.
But then on a day-to-day basis, they may just go to,
they
Walmart
shop at Walmart to afford the Gucci, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they're not necessarily, I mean, there's probably fewer of them that do that, but it's probably not zero that would ever do that. But it's all about perceived value.
Correct. Yes.
Mark, are you buying a Gucci?
He's got
no,
one.
but I might try to justify buying another guitar.
All right, so we wanted to shift gears into probably one of my favorite topics, and it's around like influencing budget. I think we're in a time, I think post-COVID, a lot of industries, a lot of brands have experienced a lot of A&P pressurization. Let's just put it very, very simply. For many organizations, there's less money that's going out into the market, even though there is you still see growth in advertising overall. But I have noticed that there are a lot of industries that are struggling. Like aviation was one that struggled out of the gates. You think that whole tourism sector, and the list goes on and on. So what we're always actively trying to do as marketers, make sure that we're defending the need for budget, showcasing, how with the lack of investment, how you can start deteriorating consumers' minds, how you maintain that presence. I would be curious to hear you speak to how the growth accelerators that we talked about earlier can be used to help build a business case for more budgets with the CFO. Maybe we can become buddies with the CFO.
Yes, maybe you can. So you see, a lot of these answers, if not all of the answers, can be found in your brand tracker, and your sales data. So you see, I like this article by Mark a lot. The 3 axioms Mark written. So he talks about the fact that the first step in any decent brand strategy is a step back. Get a tracker, get a proper one. He says so. Committing to what your brand should stand for instance, and deciding what perceptions you want to reinforce or shed is a great way to nourish your brand. But you do this in a way where you can stand in front of the board and have a solid argument where you're going to say, right, you will know exactly how much a tiny change in your consumer perception is worth. So if you improve, for instance, your X or Y attribute by the end of the financial year, you will be increasing your revenue by X%. Okay, and this is something that you can work out. The attribute exercise, which is a very valuable exercise that every marketer should do, let's say at the beginning of the year, is you find the answers, you will find the triggers in your tracker. On your sales data, for instance, you can look at whether your penetration is down in every retailer or whether it's a standalone incident with one retailer. But if it's across all the retailers, then you probably have an assortment issue. And your target should be to optimize your trade efforts to find ways to introduce more SKUs in the stores. Or let's say if the data says, again, in your brand tracker, if the data says that your buyers are distracted by cheaper alternatives, your copycats that have a much lower price, then you've got to widen the mode around your business, as in what Warren Buffett refers to as the brand, the mode of the business. So in this case, you take the money from your promotions. Probably all the money, I would say, but limit a lot your promotions. Use them strategically and sparingly, and reinvest it into brand. Because the more predisposed people start to feel towards your brand, the less important price will be in their purchase decision. And to your point, yes, so the good marketing leaders will become BFFs with the CFO, because it will become very clear in the board conversation that you're not just quoting the typical advertising metrics. You are looking at things. You're looking at the health of the business, like in a similar way that an investor or a CFO are doing. And they will know this because you've clearly aligned your brand objectives to the business goals. You've won their respect. They need you, and they want to put more money in your budget.
I love that.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, so much of this is dependent on even the articles you wrote before. Right? The ones you already wrote that we talked about before. They're not the conversation that you would normally, that I've had a whole bunch of times in my career, which is, we're going to go top of funnel, and, we need something super emotional. And the things we're talking about, or that you're writing about, are, let's talk about pricing power and how do we influence that? That's a very financial objective, which is an easy thing for a lot of business people to understand. Which I think just by having even that conversation changes the conversation, because you're not just saying, well, we need more money to do a top of funnel campaign, highly emotive, resonate campaign. It's about we're trying to achieve something, which is obvious to the business that if we increase price, without losing volume, it's going to drive profit. So just even that conversation shifts entirely when we're talking about investments as opposed to campaigns.
Yes, we know they know it's important, as in pricing is very important, but we also know they don't necessarily prioritize it. It's quite low in the priority list. All of that from surveys, us and ours, the CMO and the Gartner survey. So we will keep on talking about this, and I will keep on looking at the results of the surveys to see whether it's gone up in the priority lists. So there are a number of factors. It's not just about knowing that you've got to be focusing on something that is good for you. It's going to be good for your business. There are a number of business pressures, as you know, and time is an issue as well. Not everyone is patient enough. The market themselves, the rest of the group as well, to wait for the longer term results.
Mark always talks about this when we think about like the Mark Binkley, co-host here, the 4 Ps, right? And the 4 Ps of marketing, and obviously pricing is one of them. But often, many organizations regulate marketers to the promotion part of those 4 Ps. I feel like this is now kind of getting back into that space of not relinquishing, not gaining control of pricing, but influencing pricing.
Yeah.
And influencing these conversations in a wider scope than we have in the past. Because if we do it to ourselves, that we just become the coloring department, then that's all you'll ever be, is the coloring department. But if you're venturing out and you're speaking to things like pricing and how it can help, how marketing can help influence that, I think it just naturally creates a different level of affinity between the groups as an active stakeholder in the business versus a passive stakeholder in the business. And I think that's where it becomes really important that we, as marketers, do a better job in that space.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like, and the other thing to add to that, V, like, the brand tracker becomes so important.
Yeah.
And so if marketers in the promotional lane are just doing stuff around promotions, and we're fixated on like, what was the ROAS or what was the ROI? What's your CPC? It's not the conversation that you're proposing, Mary, that we need to have more of, which is the slower moving metrics, which also have super relevance. Also have a lot of impact on the business outcome, like moving the willingness to pay, like moving the salience. Like, those are not short-term metrics, but are super important for driving equity in the brand, which leads to higher prices, which leads to more people buying. But if we're not having those conversations, we don't have the metrics to support those conversations, then we can't really we don't have a leg to stand on when we say, well, these things are important.
Correct.
Do you are there, I know this wasn't one of the things we talked about before, but are there easy ways to set up trackers? Do you think
you can call us? It's one of those. You know how I said at the very beginning that I write about things that clients or future clients ask questions about, and tracking brand guidance is one of those things. So I don't know how easy it is, but there's a whole team of experts that will make it look very easy.
Right.
And there are a number of dashboards and automated websites that we have that have a number of brands in there, and maybe actually your brand is already in there. So you can. There is a lot of data from Brand Z that is actually free. It's offered for free. So we can provide links for those, but I'm not talking about Brand Dynamics, because Brand Dynamics is not free. But the other name that currently doesn't come to my head is actually available for all to use. Will come to me in a second. But yes, there are probably easier and less easy ways to set up a tracker, but with a partner who has been doing it for decades, it suddenly becomes easier.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, hire the experts.
Yeah. Yes. Maybe we make this our message, but I don't. Yes. Let's not make this our message.
Yeah. No.
A very subtle one, maybe. Let's create some predisposition around this.
There you go.
But all that to say, it's important. And so my takeaway from this is, like, if we don't have a brand tracker, or at least like a balanced scorecard of short and long-term metrics, that's a really good starting point.
Yeah, it is. You need both for sure. Yes.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And you need to know that you shouldn't worry about some of them not moving pronto.
Right. Yeah, and if you set up an expectation of it, we're going to track this like quarterly instead of daily, or yearly instead of monthly, whatever those things are, then the expectation is there that you're doing it. It's just that you're not doing it every single day because it doesn't move every day.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
Love it.
Yeah. Mary, this has been great. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you.
Thanks for publishing all those great articles. And there's just so many great things that you guys have been working on. So I really appreciate the chance to chat with you again.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to write about them. It's a lot of, there are things that are coming out of the lab that are very, very good not to write about. So I always get very excited. And many conversations later, something like a piece of this series is produced. But it's it's a discovery that starts in the lab and then ends with me writing about it in a very simple way.
Right.
But many people are involved though.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, we're happy to be involved. So thank you.
Yeah. You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me again. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll put all the links in for everybody to all the articles, and we'll get the brand trackers link when that comes to mind. We'll put that in there as well. So thanks again, Mary. It's great.
Ευχαριστούμε, Mary.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ και τους δύο. What?
No, just I love the Greek part. Go.
Oh yeah. Okay, the
Next
next
time we'll
one.
do this.
Mark,
we'll do it all
no
in
pressure, but the next one it will have to be in Greek. So you have a year.
I got a lot to work on.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Starting today, Duolingo.
I'm just gonna say things like Saganaki and
yes, you can say these things.
I'll just say it over and over again.
We're gonna have a wonderful conversation then. Yes.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you both. Bye. Yes.
If you like this show, please leave a review. And even if you didn't, we'd love to make this show better, and your feedback will help us do that. The post-pod time.
There we go.
Mary Kirikiri. Although you say that much better than I do. It's like
Mary Kirikiri.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. I have to channel my inner Greek. Mary Kirikiri.
Mary.
No. Mary.
Mary. She's gonna be listening. She's like, "What are you guys doing?"
You guys
That's
are
my name. Don't wear it out. We are a little goofy, loopy.
Let's get into it.
Well, first of all, let's recognize the fact this third time on the podcast.
Yeah.
One of the OGs, and we love everything that she brings to the conversation. And we talked about a few things,
mm-hmm.
and it felt like we covered a lot of ground. There was a few things that stood out to me. The role of price in the marketing strategy. We got a little bit into the meaningful difference once again. Obviously, Kantar is really famous for that. What else did we have?
Future power.
The future power. Yeah. Do you want to start there?
Sure.
Yeah. So the summary on that one is that brands with more equity today than expected, given their brand size, which is their future power, are primed to grow and grow faster in comparison to brands with less equity. So yeah, I think there's an interesting component there, which is to say that like the way you do things, I think matters, and the amount of memories you're building, and because you talked about mental availability, things that they believe in still. It's just there's something else, and I think it's the meaningful difference component, like being perceived as different is sort of the nut, if I can say it, of that way of what makes the Kantar model different from, say, the Ehrenberg Bass model.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I think the perception of being different and more meaningfully different than competitors is one of the key components, and the scale at which that happens is the mental availability, and the physical availability then is the footprint that you're creating. So I get that. I think it's definitely interesting. What were your takes on, or your thoughts on it?
Well, I just want to quickly touch on the meaningful difference, and for those that maybe have not heard that before, it's really kind of here. Let me see how I compartmentalize this the right way. Being unique isn't enough. Is kind of like the crux of it. Brands need to both different and meaningful to consumers. So this goes a long way in strengthening things like brand equity. It supports pricing power, and it also allows to drive long-term growth. And it's worth mentioning that when we're thinking about sometimes these frameworks, is understanding the role that they play in that ability of driving, say, long-term and short-term growth, right? And I think we can't understate it enough that you need to start rooting yourself in something to be able to do that. And I think when I think about pricing power and things like that, there's always the usual suspects that come to mind. I think we talked about Apple as a part of the conversation and things like that they're able to demand higher pricing power because they're, at least to the way Kantar approaches it, they are unique, but they're also meaningful to consumers. So I think from that perspective, understanding the role of being meaningful and different, I think is good. But the brand value and price elasticity, what the hell is that? Brands perceived as valuable can maintain higher prices with less pushback. Strong brand equity lowers price sensitivity and protects margins. So I think those kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think.
There is a brand being perceived really different. There's one of the reports that she had, or in one of the reports or articles she had. There's a graph there around brands being perceived really different along the x-axis, and then on the y-axis, willingness to pay. And so there's a strong positive correlation there. All that to say, like, I think when brands are perceived to be meaningfully different, they can do things like charge a price premium. And then that obviously drives profitability. And then having that price premium means you're able to withstand some more of the week to week, day to day, month to month changes of consumer discounting that you might need to do. But over time, it has a bigger impact on profitability.
Totally.
Which I think is part of that future power idea. I think the tricky part for me is whether you're using words like a concept like future power, willingness to pay, price premium, brand equity, whatever the mental and physical availability. I think whatever it is, it needs to be something that's internalized in order to have better, meaningful conversations with finance. And that was one of the other things that she had talked about, was having more financial conversations with financial and business language as opposed to just marketing speak. So whatever the concept is in marketing that we're talking about, I think ultimately it needs to come down to a business speak level.
Yep.
And I don't mean down to, it just means it needs to be translated. That's probably a better way.
Totally.
So that there's a clarity and an understanding of what we mean when we say things like pricing power and things like that.
I love that you brought that because again, it's the ability to link brand metrics with business outcomes not only helps secure any sort of buy-in from financial teams. It goes back to, I think it was in a conversation, it's a future conversation, sorry, because we're kind of recording these back to back with Charlotte Blank on, the three big challenges that we're constantly facing as marketers, like defending budgets and things to that effect. So I think making sure you find that way to translate your any metric that you want to use. Like, I'm not going to here to say use this specific metric. Whichever one tells the story the best for you and your organization, what you're trying to achieve, find a way to link that to actual financial metrics, and that will be the biggest hurdle that you clear in your in this pursuit of maintaining, protecting budgets, asking for incremental budgets, etc.
Yeah, and there's. We talked a little bit about like the difference between a luxury brand like Gucci and say a low cost brand like Target, and so there's obviously differences. I think we mentioned somebody who buys a Gucci bag might actually end up being the same person who shops at Target at some point,
probably.
But there are like similar processes there, and because things like inflation happen and are a reality, the cost of goods goes up. Every brand, no matter if it's about everyday low prices or about expect more, pay less, or it's about true luxury, every brand does need to consider the future power of their brand to be able to increase price without decreasing volume.
Totally.
And so the idea of, discounting, running discounts and promotions to acquire more of the customers that are in market today is important, but equally important is the ability to let new buyers know why something is worth it at our store or at our location or for our brand.
Yeah.
Because that's the future power of the future buyers and the future group of people that are going to be tomorrow's new customers. And if they don't have a clarity on why something's worth it, then they're just going to look for the discount.
Yeah, no, dude. Yes. I completely agree. Completely agree with that. The one other thing that I think it was important to mention is like we talked about bridging brand and performance marketing. I know it seems like the multiplier effect really kind of brought another renaissance to that whole debate, if you will. And I think we have to appreciate that, excuse me, siloed marketing efforts can be costly, right? And integrating brand and performance ensures immediate results don't come at the expense of long-term equity. And again, that WARC study, the multiplier effect, we'll link it again in the show notes. I think we link it anytime we possibly can. It's an incredible study.
Yeah.
But again, don't look at these two things as mutually exclusive. They need each other to operate, right?
Yeah.
And of course, you're going to have products that maybe need less on the performance side, more you can just kind of lean more on the brand building, etc. Just by nature of products. I think of auto, for example. Very rarely do you see like retargeting and remarketing ads. People are just, doing just big campaigns instead. But yeah, just make sure you're bridging those two things. And if they're on two different parts of a team internally, well, make sure that you're laying a bridge across them. If you happen to be lucky and they're all reporting under one similar structure, then, hit the accelerator on that.
Yeah.
So,
speaking of the accelerators, we talked about the three growth accelerators. So predispose more people, meaning invest in advertising experience to get more people in front of, or get your brand in front of more people. Being more present, and so getting the physical brand available in more places, either through distribution or e-com or whatever the thing might be. The other part that I thought was really interesting, it was in finding new space. So addressing more customer needs, appealing to more usage occasions, looking at the possibility of opening new categories. I think that one is really interesting. We talked to, literally we were just interviewing Charlotte, and then now we're recording this one.
I know.
Charlotte will come up in the future. So if you're listening to this, then you'll hear about Charlotte's interview soon. But yeah, like thinking about, we've talked about this a couple times. The idea of creating awareness is important.
Yes.
But maybe less important than creating situational awareness, which is idea, I think, finding new space, where it's the situational awareness or the salience, the recall of your brand in specific buying situations.
Yeah.
Which is independent of a persona. You know, you can have multiple personas that have a similar need. And so thinking about the market segmentation through the lens of category entry points or purchase triggers or user needs, as an example, is a really interesting way of finding new space, because then you can target that new space and build the brand links between your brand and that trigger or that need in a way that's different than just thinking about a persona.
Yes. You're on a roll today, man. Like I couldn't agree more with that. And I don't know if there's a finger that we need to point somewhere for us, you know, going down these persona rabbit holes where we've, you know, as a community, we've overvalued, probably trying to identify that when like there's I think it's been proven now that we need to be approaching things a little bit more, a lot differently than just kind of isolating personas and trying to find those personas. Because like you said, early on, someone that shops at Target could also buy a Gucci bag.
Right.
What's that persona?
Yeah.
'Cause those are two totally different people, technically, in those exercises.
Right.
Like a persona wouldn't pick up the nuance that just because someone appreciates luxury, isn't also price conscious.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
They seem to be in opposition of one another. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. But in the reality, they're probably not.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. So much stuff.
So good.
So good.
Yeah. Mary, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks for the return tour. That was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Another great conversation, Mary.
Yeah.
Mary.
And then, Mary.
There you
Is
go.
that it?
There you go.
Mary?
Yeah.
Uh,
He's Greek. Mark's Greek
like,
now.
It's like Mehry. Mehry.
Yeah. Mehry. Mary.
Okay. That's the Greek way.
That's the Greek way.
Okay.
There you go.
I see I'm learning Greek already, V.
Attaboy. I told you, man. My brother from another mother.
All right. Well, until next time, we will we'll keep chasing that profitability.
That's all we do.
Use the meaningful difference framework for it.
That's all we do around here.
Yeah.
That's all we do.
If
Thanks
there's
for keeping us
anything we
serious.
can yeah, I was just going to say, if there's anything we can keep doing to make ourselves more meaningfully and different so that you keep us in your ears, please do. Let us know.
Please let us know. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Always open to feedback and sponsors.
And that.
And that.
All right, V. We'll talk to you soon.
That was great. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.